Well, we can move into the case studies now, if there's no other questions for now. And the idea here is just to have maybe 3 to 5 minutes if you want to just talk about really your case study, and maybe touch on why you chose that, and you know, is this something that you see feasible? Is it something you could possibly do in your line of work? Um, yeah, and just share a little bit about what you wrote for the paper. So,
And something about the community that you serve
hmm hmm
would be helpful, geographically as well as demographically.
I'm happy to lead us off.
Great.
Well, thanks, Jeff.
Sure. Um, so as I said earlier, I'm currently working at a college counseling setting in Colorado Springs, and thought it would be the most meaningful for me to be able to apply this to the work that I'm currently doing. So my case study was sort of investigating in the college counseling setting some of the institutional barriers to be able to work from a more depth oriented perspective. I think from my experience last year and my experience working in this setting, one of the things I'm learning is that the primary sort of mode of evaluating progress of clients, of students, is their self described symptom reduction. That
hmm
sort of seems to be the gold standard for effective treatment. We're not necessarily required to give some assessments like the BDI or other sort of measures to quantify reductions in symptomology. But that being said, that is sort of the primary lens in which we try and evaluate client progress. And as a clinician who really adopts more of a sort of existential and humanistic lens, that hasn't really sat with me, especially given the nature of this developmental time, what it means to be a college student, um,
hmm
facing some really deeply penetrating existential questions about who am I? Who do I want to be in the world? Who am I separate from my family system? These really deep questions that I find students are grappling with, and a lot of the approaches that are used within college counseling settings, whether they're behavioral or, you know, targeting specific symptoms, I think leaves a lot of students feeling missed, in feeling like they don't really have this therapeutic space to express what's impacting them on the deepest level.
Mm.
So my case study was sort of offering a critique on this approach to working with college students and putting forward a different way of working, considering some of the institutional constraints. My college counseling center, we work within a 8 week model or 8 session model.
Mm.
So there are significant limitations to integrating a more depth oriented approach. But those are all things I'm thinking about. How can we, uh, in a therapeutic relationship, create a space where students can share what is most essential to them, in a way that also fulfills the sort of expectations, requirements of the institution that you're working under.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Mhm.
Jeff, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about that, but I'm really interested in what you chose for this. How are you open to any questions?
Sure.
How would you how would you apply that? So you've identified the barriers. Do you have any ideas around how to maybe start pushing back or integrating this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm wanting to look at is um, really starting to consider alternative measures of psychological health in
Mm,
students.
Mhm.
not necessarily that by the end of 8 weeks, their score on a anxiety uh,
Mhm.
assessment went from 8 to 6, because that sort of implies that the presence of anxiety itself is problematic. So,
Mhm.
wanting to sort of shift sort of the measures of success in therapy, um, and allowing students and clients to sort of lead that, um, from the sort of intake, from the onset of the therapy, really centering um, their individual aspirations in our work together, not
Mhm.
necessarily these external measures that we're sort of being told to implement, right? So I think really identifying what is most essential uh, for the clients, um, and really hesitating to accept maybe that, um, sorry if I'm being repetitive here, but some of the
No,
ways in which we're assessing progress
yeah.
might need to be relooked at.
So
Uh,
Jeff, are you talking about like follow-up qualitative measures or qualitative inquiry, following
yes,
up
that
on the
that's one of,
quantitative?
sorry,
Oh, sorry, following up on the quantitative?
following up on the quantitative, and also throughout the process of therapy, opening up dialogues about with clients what's working and what is not. So sort of offering a continual stream of
Mhm.
feedback, but in the context of the therapy relationship. Um, yeah.
Mhm.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, Jeff, that reminds me, and I want to say this now. One of the goals with the case study and joining the core is not just this theoretical, like, how could you apply this, but
Go.
we
I'll
also hope to provide resources that can support you the best way we can
mm,
in trying to implement these things. So,
mm.
um, now that you've moved through this program and you're, in the depth healer member level, we'll work on connecting you with the resources that we have, um, that we've made thus far, and maybe can help in some way in implementing this idea.
That's one of the things I'm most excited about being part of this program is,
Yeah,
um, doesn't necessarily end once we get off this call.
that's
Uh,
right.
Continue to be in community, and um, I appreciate that offer, Tyler. I'll
Yeah.
take you up on that.
Well, and to your point, I really view the relationship starting in terms of the community and in this sense now, the certificate kind of being the way into that.
Mm,
Not that you and I already didn't know each other, but
sure.
now kind of in an official sense, at least for the core, for any member that goes through the program, now we are, in this community, and that's the idea with the depth healers circle meetings. We're
Mm,
gonna and it's a drop in. So if someone doesn't make it for 6 months and then they can, there's no you're not gonna you get kicked out or something if you can't go. But we want to have that community. The idea with the core is that we're building a community, and this certificate program is the first step of in doing that. How can we all take these ideas and implement them? Um, and this is our chance to come together and share that same goal.
mm.
Yeah, I just like to hitch on to that, a question about the curriculum that we offered. Were there any specific pieces of that curriculum that applied to your focus on the counseling
Yeah.
students, like anything in the videos or the articles that
Yeah, I,
specifically were relevant?
yeah. I thought a lot about um, both the somatic elements of the work we do as well as the spiritual dimension is something I grappled with a lot. Um, Specifically around the work within college counseling centers are sort of devoid of this spiritual element of healing and what it means to be a human being. So I'm also sort of arguing for recognizing the importance of that aspect in the work that we do.
Mhm.
Um,
Like
those
the
were, yeah, two sort of core pieces that I was considering.
so like the bigger questions, the bigger picture questions about
Right.
what really matters to them and where they're headed and what life means, I guess, in a
Yeah,
broader, deeper sense for them.
absolutely.
Yeah. And the embodied aspect of that, not just the head, but
Mhm.
uh, how they're feeling, what they're sensing, imaging. You go into that in your work?
I do, yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah,
So, right.
especially within those settings, it's not the easiest all the time.
Right. Which isn't necessarily unique to the college counseling setting, but I do, one of the things I like about working with college students is it's just such a, to me, fascinating developmental period of one's life where I think these existential questions are really ripe in a way
Mhm.
that facing them directly can I believe instill a lot of really positive transformation. Um, and it seems like such a ripe opportunity to face some of these questions, but you need a specific type of holding environment to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about time? Just curious about time wise too. Do you feel you have the time to go into these questions more deeply, or are you
I
really
think so.
restricted?
I mean, I think it depends. I think it has to be evaluated sort of on a case by case basis, depending on what specific client is presenting with. If they have the desire or the maybe capacity to face some of these more these deeper questions about who they are, the nature of their existence. But I do, I mean, in my work, I've found that there are many students who these questions are really pressing and they're sort of yearning to have places to explore them without having to find answers necessarily or to um, leave therapy feeling like their anxiety is no longer present. I think there are a lot of students that are really yearning for some of these conversations. And I don't know if they have many places to engage with these
Yeah,
questions either.
probably probably not.
Yeah.
But so you can go beyond the 8 weeks if needed, if appropriate.
Yeah, the nice thing about the model I work in is it's 8 weeks per semester.
I see.
So if students want to continue working, they can for close to a full year. So
That's good.
that
Wow.
is one of the limitations is how do you engage in this level of depth over
Mm.
a short period of time. I think that that poses a real challenge, and uh, like I said, there are case it's a case by case basis, depending on what a client is wanting to work on and what maybe they have the capacity for as well within that um, time constraint.
Oh, okay. Do you have any
So
questions for us based on all this at this point, or you can reserve it for the end? Either way.
there's nothing pressing at this moment in time, but as I'm listening to others, I'll be
Mhm. Okay.
about other
Cool.
possible questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I
Thanks, Jeff.
appreciate both of you creating this program. It's been really meaningful, and I'm really excited to see what it brings in the future. So thank you both.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm really excited to hear more about that. That's really, really cool. Thanks, bud.
Yes, me too. Okay. Anyone else willing and, and capable of relating your conception of how you're going to apply this material that you've just immersed in for the last 16 weeks?
Yeah. Um, well, I decided to do mine. I was thinking about doing the something with the work with the sex offenders, but I haven't started yet. So I feel like
Mhm.
maybe like get my feet wet and see what comes up and then kind of take it from there, maybe do another bridge building proposal. When thinking about it, I wanted to try to do something like, really polarizing right now, which is politics. Um, and Braver Angels does that, but in like a specific existential lens, I was thinking, and just the freedom and responsibility pairing, because I mean, that is like pretty big root. And it's like we keep facing the same freedom and responsibility issue in different flavors. And maybe just trying to uh, get at that because I was thinking about doing um, something with how people talk people I've noticed talk about the other side. They don't really talk to the other side. And it's just kind of like screenshotting stuff and saying, hey guys, like they're like demonizing or like belittling the other group and just like then people go away thinking whatever they did, but times two.
Hmm.
Um, but it was hard to like configure that into a dialogue about that. So and then I was thinking about like the theme of like I was actually listening to a podcast and it mentioned it. I think they called it secular Puritanism, but also like moral Puritanism, and just kind of you kind of how you see that on both sides in different ways. Um, and just kind of this rigidity in ideology, and when it becomes, you know, based on morals, those are really hard to shift. Those seem to be
Mhm.
non-negotiables for people a lot of the time. Um, and it kind of cuts off the curiosity and the discussion, I feel. And then, yeah, so I'm doing freedom and responsibility for this. And I'm gonna be, I'm gonna use Kirk's experiential democracy dialogue, which this morning I realized that I forgot my paragraph on the actual question
Hmm.
um, that I'm going to use and a little bit more detail about that. So, as a side note, should I, for the library, resubmit that with the topic?
Yeah, as long as it came in and I've reviewed that. Yeah, so if you want to add something in this case, if you just forgot and it, yeah, feel free to send that over. And um, I just want to jump in for a second and just mention, so what Haley's talking about with the library, we have the archive library, and we will put the submissions, the case studies in there in their own section. We'll also have a newsletter starting in the fall, and we'll mention something in there about our first cohort um, and to go take a look at the case studies. And so we want to really celebrate your ideas and support you in the work that you hope to do in our shared goal. Um, so yes, Haley, take your time because it's going to be, at least a week or two until I'm able to add that to the library.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Because I was reading it over, I was like, wait, there needs to be more details, missing one very important thing. So the question that I'm going to be using for the dialogue, and feel free because I haven't, I'm going to be submitting this if you guys have any other ideas.
Mhm.
How I was thinking about wording it is, um, because we want freedom and responsibility to both be together, and they kind of always have to be in a way. but either side maybe thinks maybe there should be more freedom or maybe there should be more responsibility in like current society. So I'm going to be asking, do you think society is currently in need of more freedom or more responsibility? And so
Mm.
either one of those will be the stance. And like, I mean, the stances can surprise us, you know. And I think maybe if both sides say the same one, then how? Because they're like they feel kind of maybe a little different or maybe they would be something. So I'm
Int
like, really, I think it'd be interesting to see how it unfolds because I think it could go in a lot of different ways. Um, and what Jeff was saying about the college thing, I think it would be a good idea, like, to go into like colleges and do the dialogue with people like wanting to talk about politics, not really having a space to do it where they think that it won't just go up into flames
Mhm.
within 30 seconds. And then they get to talk about, you know, existential stuff with it. And I think it could be really, really good and deep. And I was thinking about maybe, and I put that in there, possibly like doing the dialogue, maybe with like not needing like a prerequisite knowing about the existential givens, but maybe after that, maybe doing a little bit of like an info session about just the givens, maybe a little bit about freedom and responsibility, and then maybe going back and doing a brief dialogue after that and kind of just wrapping it all up and maybe like sandwiching just like the existential part. And because people would be learning that together and then going back and doing another dialogue, it would make it a pretty big chunk of time. And so
Mhm.
maybe the multiple like going back and forth kind of thing together throughout that it could be like extra restorative for an emotional relationship. So maybe that but I
Interesting.
don't know, existential conversations, they're juicy to me, so I think it'd
Mhm.
be pretty good.
Very
Those,
cool.
yeah, those sound like very refreshing ideas and stimulating uh, ideas, inquiries for college students. That's the population you're thinking of working with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was just this I kind of just had in mind like anybody who has a stance on politics, especially if it's polarized.
Mhm.
um but Jeff talking about college, it makes sense to me. So
You,
that could be one of the places.
you also
Haley,
mentioned,
oh,
Haley, you mentioned people often talk about the other side or they talk at the other, the
Yeah.
identified other, and don't really give space to
Mhm.
hear the other side or
Yeah, and I think
feel it.
that
I was just going to say, but I do think that the structured dialogue that's one of the main focuses is to purposely give both parties space,
mhm.
uninterrupted space to
mhm.
really hear each other and even reflect back what they've heard and get
Yeah,
a chance to correct it. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And like it makes sense. It makes sense if you don't, you know, if you want like it's like a symbolizing like your steadfastness, like I care so much about this. I'm not backing down, like
Mhm.
yes, but then also we kind of need to be open to new ideas and I think that a lot of the stuff that I see online is kind of just signaling to one's own side that they're on it and that it's the right one.
Mm.
Um, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I used a lot of your stuff on Paradox and all. I think that the Paradox is like something that I see more and more of. It's just, you know, a big old theme in life and something that we got to get used to. And the all part very much helps, and it's very much um, missing in a lot of places. So I really appreciate all the work you do with that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm with you about how that's an age-old problem, not
I think
just
it's good.
confined What's that?
We'll get it someday.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your encouragement. I'm in it for the long run too. And that probably means beyond our lifetimes, but
That's what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
got to
take it
start
one day.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Very cool, Haley. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just pose a question real quick? Haley, I'm not sure if you have thoughts on this. It's sort of just to the group at large. I'm curious um, if you had mentioned sort of awe is something you have been considering in this, and I'm just sort of wondering aloud here if experiences of awe, of maybe an interpersonal flavor of awe, can be the byproduct of sitting face to face with someone who differs
Mm,
greatly from you. Like, is there something in the fear of the other, if we're able to overcome that element um, based on differences, to meet in some way? Not necessarily that we have to meet in an agreement, but
hmm.
we meet in seeing each other's innate humanity. Is there an experience of awe that awaits us on the other side of that?
Beautiful. Wow.
I feel there definitely is. And thank you for asking that because that's a really good point. Like, and because people would come in so polarized, it gives like a big opportunity to have like if you do connect and it kind of like clicks and you're like, wow, I'm having a human connection and is with somebody
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect to. And then it's just kind of like, oh, my heart,
Mm,
the his heart grew 10 sizes a day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not a
Mm-hmm.
Grinch, but you know what I mean. Uh,
This,
so yeah, kind of just like that feeling of you're like, wow, this is working.
mm,
Could I think that feels like oh
Yeah, I resonate with that.
yeah.
I've certainly been in some kind of awe in situations with people who are on the other side politically,
Mm,
and neighborhood conversations that we've had with Braver Angels, for example. When I was most active with them, we would exchange homes to meet at, liberals and conservatives. And it was striking to me the points of commonality that came up. And they often weren't about ideology, that's for sure. But something in the home or something, a little touch in terms of, the host showing warmth or providing food, uh, uh, a certain caring feeling among the group or connection, or something about our backgrounds that resonated, uh, or even our parents, family. So I guess I see it as not necessarily the, bright and glitzy awe experiences that we often think of when we're witnessing great mountains or oceans,
mm,
but approximations
mm-hmm.
to a sense of humility and wonder
mm,
about this person I'm getting to know, and
mm,
you know a greater openness to the mystery of who they are, the more that they are, rather than
Mm-hmm.
just a label or the reduction that I begin with.
mm,
yeah,
Such a
especially
good,
too
yeah.
if they're just used to having surface level conversations a lot of the time with people maybe they have the same views on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
just having that depth face-to-face experience with anybody.
mm.
There is something about contact that's really powerful, I find,
Yeah.
one on one, especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's
Such a,
safe.
Yeah.
yes. Uh,
Mm,
Thank you so much, Jeff, for posing that question. And it makes me think about emotionally restorative relationships. This idea of what can we do in this space together. But I'd never thought about the possibility of awe even with someone that you're polarized from in terms of whether it's one specific thing or just life culture in general,
Yeah.
but the awe that can emerge in that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, very thought provoking, very cool. Wow.
Yeah. I do, as we're thinking about this, I do wonder about when you go into these conversations, does there need to already be a willingness to be changed or to be impacted? Um, is that sort of a non-starter in order to have productive conversations where maybe awe is a possibility?
Mm.
Um, because when I think about like what an experience of awe with the other could do, it's sort of, you know, in some ways shattering our small little reality boxes. It
Mhm.
opens up the confines of our worldview and allows us to see the other in a more human way, but also maybe integrate completely new ways of understanding the other that we may not have been previously open to.
Mhm.
But is that something that there already needs to be some buy-in at the beginning? And if not, is that maybe more potentially harmful to having a conversation when you know one or both parties aren't interested in meeting the other?
So,
Yeah.
great questions. And I know these have come up in various forums
Mm.
that we've been in and I've been in and so on. um, I really do think that it is a self-selection process to a great extent, and people do have to have a degree of willingness and interest in at least exploring the other side and trying to come to terms with the horrible divisions and polarizations that we're dealing with. In other words, a lot of the people that I've seen in these groups are sick and tired of the
Mm.
divisions and they're sick and tired of the hate and the violence. And they're ready for something. They don't know quite what it is, but they're ready for something new, something different, an attempt to reach across the chasm of difference. So, yeah, for sure, it's a self-selected group. Also, just frankly, one of the big challenges that we've had in these groups is that people tend to be more on the liberal side who are open to it. And that's one of the challenges that Braver Angels has had. And balancing the groups, they do try their very best. And I think it's really great bringing equal number of conservatives and liberals together in these workshops. But it has often been tougher with conservatives, and I think it's tougher on the extremes of both ends, frankly. And it's not for everybody by any means. That's why I think we can make some headway, and especially if we get more cultural focus and appreciation on dialogue, that will help. But I think in the long run, we've got to address right from the beginning, you know, child rearing,
Mhm.
education, the work setting, relationships, religious and spiritual settings, and government and diplomacy. I mean, that's why I think it's a very broad project, very long term, so that more of us are open to the deeper ways of seeing ourselves and others and bringing more of that sensibility to each of these settings. You know, the ability to explore, to, in a sense, walk and chew gum at the same time, to appreciate our roots and our background and our cultures, but also be open to discovery and other other cultures, backgrounds, without violence. or at least minimal. That's my thought. Maybe others have, or maybe you have some more thoughts on that, Jeff.
Does anyone else? I just want to give other people an opportunity as well, if anyone has thoughts.
I've got something that, I mean, I feel like this is a topic that I have way too many thoughts on. So I'm trying to pare it down a little bit, but like I think the one of the first things that come to my mind, I think about like Hegel talks about that idea of like three stages of consciousness, that idea of like conscious of the other, conscious of the self, and then unity, uh, where I kind of like we synthesize it all. Then Feuerbach takes that and says like, I'm not religious, but like this would be really useful for religion to sort of like have that sense of the other and how that comes to myself and that this would be a spiritual experience, that idea of like the removal of the split between you and I. And so I think particularly in like context of polarization, like it both offers like uniquely even more so, I think. Um, it offers so much potential for awe, so much potential for spiritual experience, for myself to like surrender to just being a part of the all of it all, a part of the more with others, like, and also at the same time, like there is, I think, uniquely because of that, there's also so much more risk involved too. Um, like it does really require like there's also so much potential for violence. There's so much potential for staying, for not sort of surrendering to sort of joining the all, joining that sort of unity. And I think that requires a lot of a humility and an openness, which I think is to do that could be deeply destabilizing depending on what ideology I might ascribe to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got a lot of thoughts about that, but I love that
Yeah, that's
question.
great
Well put.
points and inquiry. And I with Hegel, my sense is that he's a little bit more on the rational side of this, as opposed to a more whole body experience of the other, and that he believes all can be solved within the rational.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
Reduction
Very
arm,
scientific.
which, yeah,
Mhm.
I have issues with, but I also think that there is something that this is more, in my view, more oriented to the I thou kind of experience, where it's not a complete melding into the other. It's a holding of the vital tension between self and other. And that's
Yeah.
is a beauty to, and a certainly a great deal of often work to being in that kind of vital tension where you're appreciating the meeting and the differences and uniquenesses of the other. So, but yeah, it certainly can be volatile. And, I realize that I'm, in some sense, asking people if they're willing to go into the really primal places. You know, we've talked about that before, but I do believe that it does hark back to a shared human challenge of dealing with that which is other and different and radically unknown. And that's extremely primal. But I think the more that we can move toward working with that, and sometimes we're not even talking about it explicitly, it's like too much to talk about, but move toward it in terms of cultivating skills like presence to work with that, I think the better off we'll be.
Mhm.
More conscious primal and not just having it come out because
Yeah.
you're avoiding it. And because you don't see that much intentional primal ways of being come out. And we want to be robots so bad and or connect with the divine, but I mean, didn't historically, and I'm starting to get more into history, I don't know, trying to connect, all the dots, but wasn't it like kind of a wha- really wanting to move away from the primalness of humans? You kind of, I don't know if it was a shame part of that or if just, I don't know, but
I think we've been doing that for a long time.
yeah.
And maybe especially since the emergence of rationalism and the Enlightenment,
Mhm.
which has a lot of great qualities. But maybe one of the shadow sides is it took us away from our primal experience of nature in
Mhm.
some ways.
Hmm.
But I think people have been searching for the Holy Grail for a long time. It's understandable, in a way, because it's pretty frightening to face the abyss of the human condition. But I think we're finding if we're not moving in that direction, we're dealing at more surface levels, and um, that has its problems as well, as we see.
I want to be mindful of the time as well here. I know we have everyone just for another maybe 50 minutes or so. Um, Sebastian or Irina, do you want to share anything about your case study at this time?
Sure, I can jump in. Haley, I feel like you set me up really well. There's a lot of things that you were naming and what you shared. Uh,
Perfect.
yeah, I think we were in very similar headspaces, perhaps. So yeah, I think I mentioned this before that one of my biggest challenges is maybe having too many ideas and really trying to like keep it in one thing. And so I apologize in advance when you read this because I think that there's a lot there's a lot that I tried to stuff in that probably requires a lot more to read into for each section. Um, but yeah, my focus was a bit more theoretical. I wrote it on polarized views on sexual identity among secular and religious nationalism. Um, and so really trying to speak to both. I think maybe similar or akin to the idea of like secular Puritanism, but I was kind of using the idea of nationalism instead. Um, Initially, I had it more specifically on like Christian evangelical versus non-religious, but even there, like there's still so much variance. So I just thought nationalism, um, that connection tends to be a bit more reliable when speaking about such broad groups. Um, so yeah, my focus was really about like the role of like how one develops conviction and belief or a sense of ethics and like the requirement for like a sense of authenticity and like authenticity being like the reference for what is like felt or sensed as genuine in myself. Like, and that requires that openness, that access to myself, and from that kind of develops my ethics, which develops morals, develops moral conscience, shows up in belief system, and then I try to distinguish belief system from ideology. And I didn't attempt to describe like uh, what specific factors are involved that make one more vulnerable from belief to ideology. I think Kirky wrote a lot about that, uh, and so I thought I'll just reference it. Um, and then I was trying to speak about like experiential democracy dialogue and how one of the challenges that I noticed with it was, I mean, kind of Jeff, as you were saying before, like I think that there's a certain level of buy-in that's required. There's sort of an openness to the other that that seems required. I was watching a lot of the videos, and I was like very aware of like these are two people who appear to like have the capacity to follow the ground rules.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about people in my life who I would be particularly excited about if they were to be a part of something like this, but I don't know if they would be able to follow some of these rules. Um, so I was trying to talk about this idea within existential analysis, which is called the method of changing attitudes, which is essentially the PEA model, if you're familiar with it.
Hmm.
But it's specific to like attitude or personal conviction towards something, and seeing if this could be like a useful uh, complement to help with readiness towards getting somebody ready for an experiential democracy dialogue. Um,
Okay.
Again, like I only add a very brief summary. It requires so much more.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think I probably needed to do like 15 pages to do it
Hmm.
justice. And I could only stuff it down to like 7.
That's great. What does
But
PEA stand for? Yeah.
personal existential analysis.
Yeah. That's Alfred's
Oh,
program that he does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, certainly familiar with it.
Sebastian, I remember on the consult call you were kind of referencing different ideas that you had, and um, but I'm curious, what if you did have more of a runway, where would you go with this, and how would you see the possibility of applying this? You said it's more of a theoretical piece, but what's in that gap between
Yeah.
what you have here and seeing this come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, like what would be really nice to do is to spend a bit more time on making it a bit more practical.
Hmm.
Like actually having a group of people to try this out with, particularly people who are not necessarily ready to show up to experiential democracy dialogue for people who are really entrenched with an ideology. Like that's like the specific interest of
Hmm.
it is like how can it be possible for dialogue to be open there? And so I'm really wanting to create some almost template to some degree
Hmm.
um, that would allow for conversation to be had that recognizes like part of what ideology is doing is that it's dutifully protecting something quite valuable and meaningful, but also like just stabilizing. Um, like I think there's a section on how like, personal conviction gives my life a sense of like inner firmness. It gives me like ground to stand on. So to sort of be open to another opinion, it's
Hmm.
quite destabilizing to my whole world.
Yeah.
And so trying to speak to like there's so much at stake. It's not just that the other side is stupid for not seeing things the
Right.
way that I see them.
Yeah.
There's so much more happening there, but there's also the access points to values. And that's actually uniquely what could be a bit more bridge building.
Hmm.
So I want to like be able to get into specifically how to more concretely do that piece and playing around with the method of changing attitudes to see if that could actually do
Yeah.
that well.
So
Yeah, I
would
haven't
that
had much opportunity to do it though.
Kind
would
of
that
a
be through
prequel.
psychoeducation in some way, do you think? Or
Mhm.
It would be fairly clinical, I think.
Mhm.
Um, at least like to do the method of changing attitudes. But as far as like the template goes, or sort of like some level of understanding of like what's actually going on when I have a belief system that I can sort of fill out for myself.
yeah,
Um, I think there would be some parts psychoeducation, some parts like self work
yeah,
or just dialogue. Um,
makes sense
Sounds
to me.
like a fascinating workshop.
Yeah, sure does.
yeah, a
Yeah.
workshop would be pretty ideal to develop it into, but I think I'm still a little far away.
Yeah.
In a way,
Let's see what we can do as your, sorry, Kurt, go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in a way we're talking about a pre-contemplative stage
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
prior to experiential democracy dialogue or a structured dialogue with two
Yeah,
people on very
Totally.
contrasting sides. Yeah,
yeah.
makes a
That
lot of
sounds pretty
sense.
good for a buy-in because, you know, you just kind of a facilitation of people's own self-awareness and like not asking you to change anything. You want to know a little bit more about yourself. Here's how you could
Hmm.
maybe do that if you
Hmm.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a
That's
lot.
very cool.
I try to really like I took a lot of inspiration from like Simone de Beauvoir, her Ethics of Ambiguity book, and that piece around like what it is to be ambiguous and sort of how ideology attempts to solve the problem of ambiguity,
Hmm.
but it's meaningful. It's like that there's actually something valuable about what ideology is attempting to do, what 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 having an answer already provided for me that's trying to do something really useful. Um, and it's not automatically just a bad thing, but that's not just a religious thing. It's not just religious
Right.
people who have ideology, it's also people on the other side. Even if outward facing, it looks like I'm advocating for freedom and you're advocating for
Hmm.
oppression.
Hmm.
Um, that's not necessary. There's more to the story, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and I think Haley, you spoke about like the freedom responsibility thing. I think that like really, it's very much a part of it.
Wow.
Yeah, they fit together pretty nice.
Mhm.
Sebastian, what I was going to add was, well, let's see what as a community here that we're building, let's see what we can do to help get that off the ground. Um, and I'm imagining kind of a decision tree that comes up for me, and at least because we reference those that maybe fit and may not for experiential democracy dialogue. Are you a good candidate? Yes or no? And if it's no, then maybe there's this kind of this prequel of, okay, well, what do we need to get at the
Yeah,
root of to even address the idea of sitting with another
totally.
and not trying to change their mind?
Yeah,
Very cool.
This
totally.
actually gets into the whole multicultural context too for this work, and people needing different things in terms of dialogue, in terms of uh, healing, and yeah, I think it's great that we're thinking out of the box in terms of how to prepare the ground for that and what people need uh, for their individual and cultural healing process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I don't see these as either or, but
Hmm.
both and.